Hello and welcome to another episode of Pod Like a Pro.
This is the podcast that shares tips, tricks and personal experiences to help you podcast like a professional.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Nat.
And we are from Pod and Pen Productions.
And we'd like to acknowledge the Awabakal people from whose land we are recording on today.
Now today, Nat, do you know what we're talking about? Listening.
What? No. Just joking, because listening is fundamental in all phases of podcast production.
It is actually, a lot of people think that talking is the number one thing that you've got to do when you're a podcaster, but listening is so much more important.
Who are we listening to?
There's so many different people we're actually listening to and different reasons for listening. So we're going to go through those today. The first one, of course, is that you're listening to your guest, the person that you've invited onto the podcast. If you've got a podcast where you're talking to somebody else.
Yes.
And it sounds simple enough. Listen to your guest. Duh. But it's actually can be really, really tricky because when you're in the moment, you're thinking about the next question. You're thinking about how long everything's taking. You're wondering, is this microphone turned on? And so listening actually to what the person is saying can sometimes be a bit tricky. So you've got to stay in the focus. I actually like to write down. I like to have I'm old school and I like a pen and a bit of paper. And I like to write down keywords that they're saying. That helps me stay engaged and focused and really listening to what they're saying.
Because it's a very different type of listening. And if you think about how many times in your day you actually feel like you've been genuinely listened to by somebody, how many times a day does that happen? Not very often. So it's a very active style of listening. It's a style of listening where it enables you to go, that's a really interesting thing that you just said. I'm curious about this in relation to that, which doesn't usually happen in an ordinary conversation. There's just a lot of, that's interesting, or...
Sorry, what? What did you say?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I was...
My brain was over there.
Yeah, I was thinking about what's for dinner. Yeah. So, yes, it's very important. And the interesting thing about that is that it can be a really interesting relationship that you have after you've interviewed them because they're so lit up by the fact that you've actually really taken in what they're saying. So sometimes it can be a bit hard to say goodbye, but not just in the interview itself as well. I think you have to listen to the guest in the lead up to actually interviewing them. So you have to listen to them about what they're willing to talk about, what they're possibly going to say, and to identify those really interesting opportunities to have a conversation because you want that conversation to be like you've never had it before.
Yeah, I also think you need to listen to your audience. And that is, don't just presume you know what they want or need or feel. Really listen. Ask some questions. Go and find people who listen to your podcast and say to them, what do you think? And then take on board what they say. Don't just, rubbish it because it's not actually what you wanted to hear. You need to listen to what people actually want.
Because you're delivering the content for them. You're delivering the content for your listener. So if you have a greater idea of what they want to hear and the way that they want to hear it, then that empowers you to be able to deliver them what they want, which is the whole reason you're doing this.
Who else do we listen to when we're doing an interview, Nat?
Well, I think listening to your gut is really important. Listening to yourself. You have to know what's authentically you because that's the thing that's going to set you apart from everybody else. You don't want to be listening to sound like everybody else. You don't want to say, well, how would Stephen Bartlett ask this question? Or how would Joe Rogan react to this? You don't want to do that. Yeah, is this authentic? Is this, am I curious about this? Am I saying it in the way that I would normally say it? Because if you're putting yourself out there, you have to feel that you are being yourself.
Yeah, you want to feel comfortable. You want to feel proud of what you sound like, even though, and I'm taking that separately from the sound of your voice, which nobody likes.
Everybody hates their voice.
But you want to know that, oh, wow, that is me on a good day, sounding like I know what I'm doing and I'm a little bit excited and I've got that authority. I'm being able to lead what I'm doing in this space. And yeah, gee, I sound good.
And when you listen back to yourself, you don't just want to sound smooth. You want to sound like you. You want to have that experience where you go, yeah, that really sounds like me. And if it doesn't sound like you, then it's about finding the ways to listen to yourself so you do actually sound like yourself. So you are being authentic. So that's important.
And that can take a lot of practice too, because I never want to get away from the fact that it is a really brave thing to press record, and we can just jump into trying to sound like somebody else because of all those nerves, because of the imposter syndrome, because you've got all this technology and you've got somebody facing you who you maybe you've admired and looked up to, and you're feeling a bit nervous about talking to, and you want to impress them, and and all these things going on. So it can be really, really tricky to actually be you, standing in your power as you're doing the interviews, and that's practice.
Yeah, and working out how to find your energy, how to access that. So it's, as you said, Liz, it's you on a good day. It's you, the life of the party. It's you being out there and confident. Also, I mean, you probably were thinking when you heard that we're talking about listening that
we have props.
We have
for
props,
a reason.
yeah, that you, during the interview is the time you need to listen. You need to listen to the audio as you're recording it. You also need to listen to the audio as you're editing it and as you're putting it through that final mastering process of the production.
Why do we need to listen to headphones? If you and I are here together and we're recording something, why are we listening with headphones?
Because there's a difference between your ears and what the recorder or the recording program you're recording on picks up. It's not going to pick up exactly what you hear. It's going to pick up the loudest things. It's going to pick up the frequencies in the room that are the most dominant. It's also maybe going to pick up stuff that you can't hear with your normal ears. So if you have headphones on, you're amplifying the sound of what is being recorded, and you're also hearing from the source that it's recording on. So you're getting a realistic idea of how it's sounding. So did you just hear that dog bark?
Yes.
Yes. So if you've got headphones on, you can hear the dog 3 streets away barking, and you can think, well, can I edit that out, or do we need to start again, or do we need to acknowledge there's a dog barking just so your listener doesn't go, oh, there's a dog bark there. Or do I need to get a denoising program that can get rid of that? But that's a conversation for another day. But when you are listening with headphones on, it's really important to have over-ear headphones, because it's going to give you more coverage of your ear, so you're going to hear better exactly what's being recorded, and that they're wired as well. You want a wired connection into the device that you're recording into, because that's going to give you the most accurate sound that you can get is with the wired headphone. I mean, they do look a bit 1985 wired for sound, Cliff Richard kind of thing, if you're that old and you know what we're talking about. But
I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, he was very cool. And yeah, it's just going to give you the best quality and really give you a good indication of what's actually happening.
And the other reason that people might want to be wearing headphones is if you're not doing an interview face-to-face with someone, but you've got somebody, say, remotely, maybe you're doing it on some software, some podcasting software or Zoom, something like that. If you don't have headphones on, what can happen is that the microphone that you've got is picking up you talking, but also your guest talking, because you've got to listen somewhere. So the computer, your laptop, is making noise from your guest talking, and then it is picking it up in the microphone, and you get what we call bleed. So it's really important that you have those headphones on so that bleed doesn't come through into the microphone. And it's a bit of a confusing concept. I hope I've explained it okay.
You'll get that echo, 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 and you don't want that.
No, you don't. And now the other really important part of listening is listening back after the recording.
Yes.
Which can be really hard. So
yes.
I feel like there's 2 aspects of that. One is the editing listening. The other is like the sound check listening.
Yeah. So the editing listening is important because you're wanting to listen with neutral ears, so that you're making decisions based on your audience who you've listened to, and that you can cut out the bits that you need to, and you can make it sound like you, so you're not cutting out weird breaths and that kind of thing in the flow. But then once you've done that and you're ready to publish, I like to listen in a few different places. I like to listen always with my headphones on, because that's how most people are going to listen to your podcast. But then I also like to run it through my car as well, because it's how a lot of other people are going to listen to your podcast. And you can, listening through the car, I can really pick up things that I can fix before I actually send it out into the world.
I'm always surprised actually at how different it can sound through, quality professional headphones like these ones, to earbuds, to on your phone, to on your laptop, to in your car. Really different qualities that come out as you're listening in different places and spaces. And then probably the final way in which we should be listening is through a sound check. And what we mean by that is that every so often, and I know it's painful, but you should be listening back to your podcast, listening to yourself with a discerning ear. Perhaps you've got somebody there with you helping you to do that. It could be a professional like us. We do offer that podcast audit service, or it could be just a friend or somebody else who has a bit of an interest in your podcast, and you're listening to how you sound. Are you listening to the person and asking the right questions after it? Do you have words that you fall back on when you forget to say something? You may have noticed then I just said, before I said that, because my brain is thinking, and one of the words that I fall back on is, and so now you know. And so knowing these things doesn't necessarily mean you're going to fix them all the time, but you can be more aware of them and reduce them a little bit, and that will reduce any annoyance that the audience might have with, that Liz, she always says,
Are you using words that are really big and non-conversational? So
listening back, especially when you're a little bit separate from the interview, like maybe you did it a month or two ago and now you're listening back, you'll listen with fresh ears and you'll just get a whole lot of information, and you just need to do it with a whole load of self-love, that this is an ongoing evolutionary journey that you're on, and we just want to improve each day.
You're human, you're not perfect. It's okay.
It's totally okay.
The closer you listen, the more you're going to know, basically. The closer that you listen, the more you're going to understand all of the things that you can do to improve and optimize the potential of people listening to your work.
Okay, I hope you've got a lot out of that and been listening very closely to what we've been saying. Thanks for tuning in today on the Pod Like a Pro podcast.
If you'd like to find out more about how you can make a professional sounding podcast, go to our website, podandpen.com.au.
Until next time, happy listening.